Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RCDI webinar. I'm Shirley Stevenson, Community Program Specialist. But before we get started today, I would like to introduce Anita Alton, the Acting Director for CF Guarantee Loan Processing and Servicing Division, to provide opening remarks. Anita?
Thank you, Shirley. Hello, everyone. I'd like to first of all say thank you to Shirley Stevenson and Nathan Chitwood and staff for organizing the webinar today. I also would like to thank our guest speaker, Ms. Charleston, for participating today. Good afternoon to everyone and welcome to the RCDI webinar. We thank you for joining us today. We hope that the webinar will be very informative and beneficial to you. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Anita. Before we get started today, I did have some housekeeping here. First, let you know that the webinar will be recorded, and the link to the recording will be available once it's received. Also, the PowerPoint presentation will be available after the webinar. For RD employees, the PowerPoint presentation has been uploaded to the RCDI SharePoint, so you can go there to get it for the time being. Otherwise, if you just leave, you'll be able to contact me by email or leave a comment in the chat box, and we will be able to send you a copy of the presentation. Please use the chat box also to submit any questions during the time. As you can see by the agenda, we will give you a quick program overview. We're going to discuss the updates for the 2022 funding round. We're going to explain the application submission process, and we will have an RCDI awardee discuss the best practices when submitting an application. We're also going to have, hopefully, time for questions and answers. The intent of this webinar really is to provide a better understanding of the program and hopefully to help future applicants submit stronger and successful applications. RCDI, of course, is an acronym for the Rural Community Development Initiative. The program was started in fiscal year 2000, and it was developed to build the capacity of recipients in rural areas to undertake projects in the areas of housing, community facilities, and community and economic development. The intent of the program is to strengthen rural communities by building capacity through technical assistance. RCDI has the trainer-trainer concept, and the delivery system is similar to a three-legged stool. You must have all three legs or components in order for it to stand. RD, that's us, will provide the grant funds to the intermediary, who is the applicant. The intermediary will use the grant funds to build or provide technical assistance to the recipient. The recipient will take what they learn to their community, who would be the ultimate beneficiary. So when you're looking at your proposal, make sure you have all three components and make sure it's clearly identified. Remember, you must have the intermediary, a recipient, and the beneficiary. The intermediary is the organization that has the experience and expertise to provide the technical assistance. The eligible intermediaries are private, nonprofit, and public entities. For this program, for-profit entities are eligible as the intermediary only for this program. The intermediary must have been legally established for a minimum of 3 years. You have to have 3 years of experience. I get a lot of calls saying, hey, we have the experience, but we have not been established for 3 years. You must have both. You must have been established for 3 years, and you must have at least 3 years of experience doing so. For the application, they're going to ask you to submit documentation. You can submit organizational documents to prove, or whatever you have to prove that's acceptable to the agency, to prove that you have been established for 3 years. please, startups are not eligible for the program because you have to be organized for at least 3 years. And also for this program, you have to provide matching funds, and it must be an amount equal to the grant. Now, matching funds for this program, like I mentioned, is a dollar-for-dollar matching requirement. So if you're requesting $50,000, then you have to have a grant or have matching funds for at least $50,000. And matching funds for this program are cash and confirmed funding commitments. In-kind contributions such as salaries, donated time, goods, and services cannot be used as a match. Now, you can use other federal funds, can be used as matching if it's authorized by statute, and the purpose of the funds must be an eligible RCDI purpose. In other words, if you have, hypothetically, if you have a grant from HUD to build houses, and you want to use that as a match for RCDI, that would not be accessible because this is a technical assistance program. So the matching funds must be an RCDI eligible purpose, and construction, real estate, none of that, that is not an eligible purpose. So we have to remember that matching funds must be used for eligible RCDI purposes. Matching funds, you have to provide documentation that you have matching funds with the application, and if you're awarded, you have to submit that documentation to show that that matching is still available. If you do not have matching funds or provide documentation that matching funds is available with the application will be deemed ineligible. So, as I said, it is the eligibility requirement. If you do not have matching funds, then the application will be deemed ineligible. And documentation for matching funds, if it's cash, you can use a copy of a bank statement. Or you can just get any type of copy of confirmed funding commitment, but you must show that you have matching funds, and it has to be for at least the amount of the grant that you're requesting. Now, the intermediary, of course, the intermediary must use the funds to develop the capacity of the recipient. And like I said, remember, there's 3 components. So the intermediary and the recipient cannot be the same. Remember, you have to have an intermediary, the recipient, and the ultimate beneficiary. And there's no restriction where the intermediary is located. And what I'm saying is the intermediary can be located in an urban area. However, the recipient and the ultimate beneficiary must be located in a rural area. Then the recipient. The recipient is the entity that receives the technical assistance from the intermediary. The recipient must be a nonprofit organization, a low-income rural community, or a federal recognized tribe. You must provide documentation for each recipient that you're proposing to work with. So for a nonprofit organization, you must provide documentation that they are nonprofit and they are in current status if it's a nonprofit. For low-income rural community, it's a unit of government or public body, and the income has to be at or below 80% of either the state or the national median household income, whichever is higher. So you have to have that. And the information for the MHI, the information is based on the American Community Survey 5-year estimate, and that information is in the Census Data website, and that's the website that you see right here on the slide. So you go there to make sure that it has to be at least 80% or below. Also, for federal recognized tribe, if they're going to be your recipient, you must provide the page listing their name from the Federal Register list of the tribal entities that was published recently in a Bureau of Public Affairs, and you must have a resolution of support from the tribe. So, depending on what type of recipient, it can be either, it can be one or the other, it can be all, it doesn't make a difference, but the recipient must be one or the other, and you must have the documentation to prove that they are eligible recipients. And the beneficiary, of course, is the community or the entities or the individuals that's going to receive the benefit assistance from the recipient. So, like I said, there's 3 components. I know you're going to tired of me saying this over and over during this presentation, but you must have 3 components. You must identify all 3. As mentioned before, the recipient and the beneficiary, but not the intermediary, must be located in the eligible rural area. For this program, the definition for rural is a population of 50,000 or less. There is a link in the funding announcement, and this is the same link that's here on the slide, and you can use this to determine if the proposed area is eligible, or you can use the 2010 population census data to prove that. And if you look at the funding announcement, it will let you know you have to provide that documentation, the census documentation, so to prove that the recipient and the beneficiaries are located in rural areas of 50,000 or less. This slide provides examples of eligible purposes. And, of course, there are additional examples in the funding announcement. And please remember, this is a train concept when developing your proposal. Like I said, you have the intermediary, the recipient, and the ultimate beneficiary. The intermediary must work directly with the recipient. You cannot work directly with the ultimate beneficiary, because if you're doing that, you are bypassing the recipient. Remember, all 3, you have to have 3 components. An example I can give you, which I use all the time, is the home ownership education classes. The intermediary can provide training to the recipient on how to conduct home ownership education classes. The recipient then provides ongoing home ownership education to the residents in their community. So the intermediary provided the recipient organization with how to conduct these programs. They took what they learned to their communities, and they started conducting the workshops for their communities, which was the ultimate beneficiary. This is the trainer concept that we're trying to get, that really is the intent of the program. The intermediary providing technical assistance that builds the recipient's capacities by helping them conduct home ownership education classes to the public. Now, like I said, this is eligible. However, if the intermediary worked directly with the communities, then it wouldn't be eligible because they bypassed the recipient organization. So you have to work directly with the recipient organization, and they take what they learn to benefit the ultimate beneficiary, was going to be the community. This slide here gives you examples of ineligible purposes. Remember, this is a technical assistance program, and technical assistance can be in the form of training, counseling, technical expertise, consultation, support, assistance. There are additional examples listed in the funding announcement, but these are the main ones that always come in, or questions we have that are ineligible. You cannot use the funds for construction in any form, to purchase real estate. Just think technical assistance. This is what the program is about. So please, when you're looking at your proposal, make sure you're providing some type of technical assistance. The grant has a 3-year performance period. So you have 3 years from the date of award to provide the service. The minimum amount request that you can ask is $50,000. The maximum is $250,000. Typically, $6 million is allocated for this program. At the time, we do not know exactly how much we have. The program has been funded every year since inception. And like I said, it's typically $6 million. So once we know exactly the amount we will have for this year, it will be It will be published on the website. You can go to an announcement to give you a website that you can go to. I've also put the website in the chat box so you can see it. And also, if you go to the website, RCDI website, it will give you the link. So we don't know exactly how much, definitely, but typically it has been $6 million. Now, I just want to give you some updates for this year, for the 2022 funding round. As you know, the 2022 announcement was published in the Federal Register on February the 8th. The notice was also uploaded onto grants.gov, and you can search it by the CDF number 10.446. It is also located on the RCDI website. Applicants can submit electronically through grants.gov and also in paper form. Fax and emails are not acceptable. And there are 2 application deadlines. Please be aware of that. The electronic application submission through grants.gov deadline is April the 19th, and the paper application submission is April the 25th. Please be aware of the deadline, because the agency will not consider any applications received after the deadlines. For those individuals who are intending to mail the application, please provide yourself sufficient time that it will be delivered before or by the deadline, because acceptance by the post office or by a private mailer does not constitute delivery. It must be received by 4 o'clock local time if you're submitting it by paper. Now, for grants.gov submissions, first-time grants.gov users, you must create a workspace on grants.gov and have a role as administrator in order to apply. And the reason why I mention this is because I've been getting a lot of phone calls of people trying to apply on grants.gov, and the to apply button is grayed out. And if it's grayed out, that means you do not have a workspace, or you are not an administrator, have a role in administrator or to apply. So make sure that you double check that, and if you're not, you have to have a workspace in order to even apply for a grant. The number here is for technical issues. If you have any type of technical issues with grants.gov, this is support number and email. They are very, very good and responsive. If you have any questions or issues, I want you to please be aware of grants.gov upcoming maintenance schedule, just in case there's issues with you uploading or want to apply during that time. Be aware of the maintenance schedule. I think they have something scheduled on April the 14th, so you won't be able to get into grants.gov during that time, but please be aware of that. Also, I want you to know that technical difficulties submitting your application to grants.gov will not be a reason for us to extend the application deadline. So please do not wait until the very deadline for you to try to submit the grant, to upload your grant or apply for a grant, because we can't extend due to this. We have 70 days to get this uploaded. So if you're having any issues, I would recommend if you go to grants.gov to make sure that you have a workspace, make sure that you do have a role as an administrator so you can apply for it, then make sure you're not having any issues prior to, instead of waiting until the last moment to do that. I would highly recommend that. And also, if you receive after applying or uploading, if you receive an accepted notification, that does not mean that the application is complete or is approved. That's just letting you know that the application was successfully uploaded. So do not take the accepted notification as, okay, I'm finished, I'm approved. No, that's not what that means. I'm saying this based on experience. We are here to help you. So we are the agency, us here, are able to assist you with technical assistance or any type of application guidance up until April the 14th. And if you have any questions, take advantage of this. If you have any questions, you're not sure if this is an acceptable document or so forth, this is the time to ask us now up until April 14th to see if this is something that, the agency will accept for documentation. So we're here to help you. You have until April the 14th. The agency, we cannot accept any documentation, eligibility information, anything after the deadline. So we're here to help and assist you. So you have until the 14th of April. If you have any questions that you want to run by or see if there's any documentation, we're here to assist. So please take advantage of that. Section 5 of the funding announcement provides all the information you need to have a complete application package. When you get the PowerPoint presentation, if you check on this checklist, it will bring you up. It will provide you with an RCDI application checklist that you can use also. It should mirror what is in the Section 5 of the funding announcement, so you can use that. Remember, all grant applicants must be registered in SAM, which is the System of Award Management. You must be registered prior to submitting an application, not pending upon. You must be submitted you must be registered in SAM. And you must have a DUNS number. Now, effective April the 4th, the DUNS number will be replaced with a unique entity identifier. So if your entity, your organization is already registered in SAM, then your unique entity identifier has been assigned, and you should be able to view what that number is in SAM.gov. If not, your organization could obtain it when they register for SAM. So you must register for SAM in order to get this identifier, and you must provide documentation that you are registered in SAM and that you have the unique entity identifier with your application. So the bottom line, you need to be registered in SAM to get this information. So make sure you register in SAM. That's one of the documentation that you have to submit with the application. It's being registered in SAM, and you have to have the unique entity identifier. Section 6 of the funding notice, will provide you with details describing the evaluation criteria and how the points will be awarded. This section also going to describe to you the review and the selection process. So make sure you look at that, because this is what you're going to be evaluated with. I have a pet peeve, and please read the funding announcement. The reason why I'm saying that is the eligibility requirements and the purpose of the program do not change. However, the criteria for awarding points may change from year to year. We have had instances where they will submit the same application year after year. You can tell they did not read it because they're addressing criteria that's not even there. That was from year before, the year prior years. So please read the announcement. And please read the announcement. That's a pet peeve of mine. Of people keep sitting in, not reading it, just taking for granted things haven't changed. And as you can tell by life, there's always changes. Things change. This year, the agency key priorities is the COVID-19 pandemic, equitable access, and climate change. We're encouraging applications that consider these projects. And if you click on when you get this, and also on the funding announcement, if you click on the link, it will give you in-depth information. But these are the applications. We're encouraging applications that address these issues. Not saying that if you don't address these that you're not eligible, but we're encouraging applications that definitely address these priorities. just want to give you a quick overview of the RCDI, the submission process. Immediately following the application deadline, the RCDI field office will review all the applications for eligibility and completeness. Ineligible and incomplete application will be notified immediately within weeks of the application deadlines, and the applications that are deemed eligible and complete will be submitted to the national office for further consideration by the review panel. Now, the RCDI grant program is awarded competitively and is based on the merit as evaluated against that's published in the criteria that's published in the funding announcement. As mentioned before, the evaluation criteria is located in Section 6 of the funding announcement. And when you're addressing the evaluation criteria, because this is where the bulk of your points are coming from, please be clear, concise, and transparent. Identify who's the intermediary, who's the recipient, who's the beneficiary. I recommend not being too wordy. I know I shouldn't say this, but don't be too wordy. Be really clear. There's a 5-page narrative limitation for each criteria. We're not asking you to write a book, but you have 5 pages to address each criteria, the narrative. So you should be able to identify who the recipient, intermediary, and the beneficiary is, and also address the questions that's in the notice. That's where the bulk of your points will be coming from. So please be, like I said, be transparent, be clear, be concise. The review panel will be USDA Rural Development National and Field Offices will review and score the applications. And all the panel members have extensive community development experience. So they will all meet, depending on the amount of application we have, will depend on the amount of reviewers we have on the panel. And the applications will be evaluated objectively, and is based on the evaluation criteria that's in the funding announcement. The pool of the applications will be divided amongst the members, but no member reviewing the application, they cannot review an application from their jurisdiction. Once all the sections are evaluated and the scores will be uploaded, and the application will be ranked from the highest to lowest. The maximum you can receive is 100 points, and that all is described in the notice as far as how it's broken down, how many points go to each evaluation criteria. And last year, for fiscal year 2021, the application that received the highest amount of points received 84 points, and the application that received the lowest was 42. It's very competitive. Last year, we received 52 applications nationwide, and of the 52, only 32 were awarded, and the average grant amount was $179,144. Now, the next 2 slides, I'm going to go slow. These are reasons for rejections. Now, these 2, I'm going back and forth. These 2 slides are not all-inclusive, but these are the ones that represent the majority of applications that have been reviewed. And like I said, I want you to see the reasons. Most of them are, if you just read the notice and go through the notice, you'll see why. It's simple reasons why they were rejected. So please, please, please be careful and just read to make sure that this is the type of grant that you're looking for, that you qualify for, and that you have all the pieces. Now, I know right now you're probably tired of hearing me because I've been talking for the last 30 minutes. So now I'm going to give someone else an opportunity to talk. I have Shantaria Charlson from the Housing Assistance Council They have been successful in receiving RCDI grants over the years, and they were willing to provide some recommendation and best practices for submitting a successful application. So at this time, I'm going to give the mic to Shantaria. Terry?
Hey, hello, good afternoon, or good morning, depending upon where you are. First, thank you so very much to Anita and Shirley for the kind welcome and introduction, as well as for the invitation to share some of our recommendations, as well as for the continued guidance around HAC's program of activities. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the agency and its leadership for their commitment of attention and resources that provide the critical capacity building to rural recipients and communities through the vehicle of RCDI. As Shirley outlined, so much of the success of an application goes into paying strict attention to the details of the NOSA. So with that in mind, I'll just spend a few minutes sharing some tips, tools, and recommendations that the Housing Assistance Council has used over the years, which we continue to shape and refine in response to the NOSA update. Shirley mentioned it a bit earlier. The priorities may, the actual requirements will stay the same, but the priorities tend to shift depending upon changing activities. So I'll start out by saying we first divide our approach into 3 stages: preparation, assembly, and submission. So stage 1, or what we call the preparation stage, and this is something that Shirley has hammered throughout her entire presentation here today. Read the NOSA. Read the entire NOSA, no matter if you've submitted 1 proposal before or you've submitted 19 like the Housing Assistance Council. Go through the entire NOSA. It's best to highlight any areas of concern or areas where you might have any questions. As Shirley said, they have up until April 14th to answer any questions. She has been really good and responsive. We've already sent over a handful of questions, and she's come back same day with responses for us. The second thing, or inside of stage 1, is that we do an evaluation. We both internal and external. We conduct an organizational assessment, and this is especially critical for new or first-time applicants. So internally, is this a good or natural fit? Do we have the existing capacity to carry out the program? Meaning, the people, the skills, the knowledge, the administrative or managerial structures, and any other intellectual resources necessary to carry out the program. In this environment of disappearing or limited resources, it is so tempting to go after every opportunity that might be a good fit, but please do take some time to consider the strain that it might place on your other programs. Does the funding opportunity align with your organization's current missions and activities so that it does not take away from other activities? There is really nothing worse than, getting a grant, receiving the award and not being able to effectively perform on the grant. Does the intended activity or the agency's priority align and meet your organization's mission? That's the internal evaluation that we do. Externally, and Shirley, highlighted a good bit of this as well. Identify your recipient organizations early. You want to look at each of the qualifiers that pertains to your recipient organizations and make sure that you have all the required documentation. Shirley also highlighted in great detail, specifically new to the 2022 NOSA, is the tribal resolution requirement for the inclusion of federally recognized tribes. You want to get out early and start on obtaining the necessary paperwork and documentation that you might need for that. The third part of stage 1 is I've been saying it even while explaining the first 2 stages. Don't delay. Start early. Set up an outline of tasks that clearly structure, the points well in advance of the submission due date. Again, the submission due date is April 19th. If you're doing it via grants.gov, or April 25th if you're mailing it in by paper. One of the critical things about April 19th on grants.gov is at 11:55 Eastern Standard Time. If you're out in California, or if you're in Kansas City, or if you're in New Mexico, those proposals are due into grants.gov Eastern Time. So put a star by that Eastern Time. The last thing, on this particular stage is to simply inquire. If you're unclear about it, just ask the question. Ask it before the April 14th deadline. Shirley is and has been very excellent at responding to questions, and not just this year where we've had, quite a few questions, but in years past. And again, she's providing timely feedback. So if you have any questions, push them to her. She's very responsive. Stage 2, or what we call the assembly stage, what we do is, we think it's a really good idea to break down the proposal by the evaluation criterion. This goes back to organizing and outlining those tasks. You want to make sure that you address all the evaluation criteria. And here's a quick tip. For those that your organization is ineligible for, because there may be one or two that you just, you don't qualify for those points, we would recommend inserting a not applicable placeholder. This lets the reviewer know that it's not something that's been overlooked, but it clearly indicates that your organization is not eligible for that criterion. So they're not going all over the proposal looking to make sure that they didn't miss something. My rule of thumb is always keep the reviewer happy, make it very easy for them to do their job. The second thing, be aware of the points for each of the sections. You know where you're going to score high or lower, and this is especially important as you look at those pieces where your organization might be ineligible. So, for instance, if you lose 10 points on a portion, then you know that you'll have to focus more keenly on other areas and make those particular pieces stronger so that you can potentially earn full points, or as close to the full points as you can get. Here's another tip or rule of thumb that we use. When you can read the NOSA letter by letter, page by page, but if you don't answer the question that's being asked, all the reading was in vain. Respond to the question that's being asked in the NOSA. The third thing, and I said this a little bit earlier, make your proposal clear and easy to follow. Be sure to clearly mark your application in all sections. And this is particularly important because, there's going to be a review team, and we don't really know who gets which pieces. Does one reviewer get all of, criterion A or all of criterion C? And so when you do that, you want to make sure that your organization, each page or piece of your proposal is labeled so they know what they have and they're not looking for different missing pieces, or it's that, this particular organization did not respond to this criterion. So make sure that you clearly mark off your applications in each of the sections. I just can't say how valuable it is to have things be so crystal clear and just straightforward for the reviewer. It makes it easier for them to go through the application. Here's the third stage, and this is really it seems simple, but it's not. It's a really big part of it, and that's submission. And so, as Shirley mentioned, there are two different methods for submission of your application. So, depending upon your submission method, you've got to do different things. So, grants.gov, you want to be sure that all required documents are attached in grants.gov. And this means that you might want to submit your proposal or your application early. The one thing about grants.gov that's different from putting it in the mail is that with grants.gov, if you submit your application, say a week in advance, you can always go back through and look to see, making sure that all parts are there. And if the parts aren't there, you can actually update your submission and resubmit that application to include any missing pieces. There's also two methods for uploading or attaching files. There's a separate attachment section where you can, attach the files, and then there's also an application button where you can click on and also upload files. We actually upload them in both places. I don't know what goes on in grant.gov and behind the scenes, but I just rather be safe than sorry. Again, Remember, grants.gov is April 19th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. And so one of the things that I want to mention about grants.gov for those that are particularly newer potential grantees or those that haven't gone into grants.gov since their last application is that the middle or late last year, grants.gov moved to verification through login.gov. And with login.gov, you need to, if you've already had a grants.gov username and password, you're going to have to go through login.gov to actually verify that you are who you say you are. And so two of the pieces of information critical that's needed for that login.gov verification is going to be your social security number, and that's for the individual submitting the application. That's not the organization's EIN or anything like that. That's for the organization submitting the application. And you're also going to have to upload a copy of your state or federally issued ID, front and back. And so what they will do is they will verify it. Again, this goes back into not waiting until the last moment. If you've not already completed that step, and actually while Shirley was talking a little bit early, I went in to make sure that I could actually get access to that application and made sure that all of my stuff was, in and ready to go. But if you've not already completed that step, or, if this is your first time, that would be my recommendation for you following this call, to go to grants.gov and make sure that you've connected your login.gov username and ID and those verification of your credentials. The second piece of the submission, and this goes to the second method, if you are doing a hard copy, again, hard copies just the same as electronic copies. Make sure that your application is easy to go through. Ensure that your table of content matches to the exact page number for any references that you might have to specific sections, and make sure that, as you go through your application review, you might make sure that you go back to update that table of content so that it reflects the number. Shirley talked about the page limitations. You have 5 pages per criterion, and some things are just not so easily explained when you're trying to keep them concise. But you want to avoid, shrinking the font down to get more words on a page, because shrinking the font down makes it illegible. It's not readable. For some people, particularly, reviewers have been looking at screens, they've been looking at many applications, and if something is so small and tiny that it cannot be read, it's almost the same as the information not being there. So that would be my recommendation, to make sure that, you stick to a standard size font that is actually readable. In terms of submission via hard copy, I would not use the U.S. Postal Service. It is not recommended. The U.S. Postal Service mail goes through a different process at federal agencies. Either FedEx or UPS or other courier service would be advisable. And if you are submitting it anywhere close to the due date, I would make sure that I track that package all the way until it says delivered. And when it says delivered, I would give whoever a call at whatever your local or state office is, or if it's going to the national office to Shirley, I would, give her a quick call, send her a quick email. Just want to verify that, you received a hard copy of our application. Whichever submission route you choose, just remember to please be sure to mark all pieces of your application and their applicable sections. And I'll just give a few final tips. I've talked, a good bit here, and so I'll just wind down. First thing, pay attention to the page limitations. As I said, if a reviewer can't read it, it's just the same as it's not there. One other thing that Shirley touched on that I did not cover is to be sure that you understand the match requirements, not only for the purpose of the application, but too for your general program administration. Evidence of match, it is actually due as part of your submission, and also at grant execution if you are awarded funds. So make sure that you understand the match requirements and ask any questions in advance about that. Number 3, be sure to retrieve your active SAMS registration verification. Lots of organizations or agencies take their systems offline for maintenance and update. So you don't want to wait until the last minute. Be sure to, go into login.gov to connect your credentials and your verifications to grants.gov. Again, ask any questions. If something's not clear, ask the question right away. I typically, and this might be a bad thing, I don't wait, for a couple of weeks and combine all of the questions I have. If I get two or three and something's pressing and I need it before I can move on, I'll send those questions and say to Shirley, please forgive me. I'm going to send more questions, or this is my last batch of questions. And so she's been very understanding for that. And then the last thing that I would say is, and this is just a thing that I've said all along, please, please, please do not wait until the last minute. Get out ahead of it. Submit on grants.gov very early. Grants.gov is unforgiving. They do not bear any burden for technical difficulties in uploading or any of that. And so I would just do that in advance. So with that, those are the tips, tools, and recommendations that we wanted to share from the Housing Assistance Council. So good luck on your applications, and I hope that these suggestions and tips might be helpful to you. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate it. I think you may have some questions, or you may have a question, so if you look at the chat box and see if it's something that you can be able to assist us with, that would be great. Right here, right now, for any additional information that you need on the RCDI program, you can check the website. You can also contact your local rural development state office, and the links are here located on the PowerPoint presentation. And right now, we're just going to go into questions and answers. So we do have a little bit time left to answer some questions. So I hate to open up the floodgates. Now, like I say, we may not be able to answer all the questions, but we try to answer as many as possible. If I cannot get to your questions, or if you have additional questions, you can always send me an email. Or if you just put it in a chat box and we didn't get to it, I will have a report where I would be able to answer your question personally once once this recording is finished. I do have one here. It said, must the nonprofit be located in the low-income rural community or serve a low-income rural community? No, there's three type of recipients. You either be one or the other. You're either going to be a nonprofit, a low-income rural community, or a federal recognized tribe. However, all three must be located in a rural area of 50,000 or less. So if you're a nonprofit, you must be located in a rural area, and your service area must be rural. It has not low-income rural community is a totally different recipient. So that's different from what you're asking. So if you're a nonprofit, you're located in a rural area, and your service area must be a rural area, not a low-income rural community. Let me make sure I do this. A question about, can an intermediary contract outside third parties to provide specific targeted technical assistance to recipients? That's a tricky one. Yes, you can contract a small portion. You have to remember, you are being evaluated based on the expertise that you serve. And pass-through grants are not eligible for this program. So if you have a proposal, let's say a small portion of it is something that you may have to contract out just to do that small portion, that may be something that's acceptable, but you got to remember, when they evaluate the criteria, they're looking to see your expertise. So if you have to, or you're proposing to contract out 50% or 75% of the project, that's showing you do not have the expertise, and you will be evaluated accordingly. So you have to be very careful if you're going to contract out a portion. A small portion is fine, but if it's going to be something that's large, that would be considered either pass-through, or you're showing that you do not have the expertise to provide the technical assistance that you're proposing to do. this is a question, do I understand correctly? The recipient must be both a nonprofit and have an office located eligible. No, if you're either going to be one of the three recipients, so if you're a nonprofit, you should be located in a rural area and your service area should be in a rural area. It does not have to be a low-income rural community. That's for that specific type of recipient. So if you are a nonprofit, you can be located in a rural area and your service area will have to be rural. It does not have to be in a low-income rural area, if I'm asking your question correctly. You have here someone was asking you about the priority points and the criteria and the points calculation. If you look at the NOSA, you have priority points that could be given by the state director and the administrator. I think the state director, the max they can give would be 10 points, and I think the administrator max they can give is 20 points. And they're looking at the priorities that they're encouraging those applications that hit those priorities, and it's those, I can't even think I'm up there. It's those that's the proposal is going to impact the COVID-19 pandemic. The head, all that is going to be is broken down. How it's broken down in the NOSA, in the funding announcement. And if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be on page 7092. So it's going to be the points will be, now the points can be broken down. We don't know how. We just know the administrator has up to 20 points and the state director has up to 10 points. And if you read the notes, it tells you exactly how it's going to be broken down. And it doesn't tell you how, it tells you the max they can give you. So how it's going to be broken down, it all depends on the priorities that you have and the discretion of how they're going to divide it. So I don't know offhand exactly how, but that's the max that they would be able to award for each. So if you have something that's a proposal is going to meet one of those priorities, then you will be getting points for that. Someone's asking, can you make sure I understand correctly that points will be awarded based on the service area of the program? Yes, it's going to be based on, if you look at the population, if you look at the population scoring, the points in the funding announcement for the population and income, that's based for where the recipient organization is located. That's how they calculate the points that you would get for that. Is a question regarding the Form 400-4. No, the intermediary and the applicant do not have to submit the 400-4. Those certifications are included in your SAMS.gov registration. However, you do need that Form 400-4, the assurance agreement. You need that signed by each and every recipient that you will be participating with. So if you do not have that form signed by them, then that recipient will not be eligible. So, but you do not need it for the applicant or intermediary. I'm getting the indication that we are running out of time, but I do, like I said, if I did not get to your question or you have more in-depth question that you want to ask, you can leave the question in the chat box or you can email me and my slides. This is my contact information. And also, do have an announcement. Nathan, are you online regarding the CFTAT program?
I am. Thank you, Shirley. Just a quick announcement. We do expect the notice for the Community Facilities Technical Assistance and Training Grant to come out probably next week. And we have scheduled a webinar for Tuesday, April 19th at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. April 19th, 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome. And before we get off, we do have a question that someone asked. Terry, are you on the line to answer this one question?
Yes, I'm on the line, Shirley.
Okay. I think that was number 16. I think that would be the last question that we would have time to answer.
Okay. It says $50,000 of funding plus $50,000 awarded from grant equals $100,000 minimum towards technical assistance and training without any actual construction. How will a grant with these constrictions help a rural community to develop? Because there are no construction costs that are allowed, specifically providing capacity building through technical assistance and training to recipient organizations, whether it be nonprofit, tribal entities, or local agencies of government. You would be able to increase their capacity to deliver affordable housing or community and economic development by providing that one-on-one coaching, assistance, and guidance, as well as any training that then builds their capacity or the staff's capacity to work with additional beneficiaries in the field. And so, as Shirley mentioned earlier, it really is looked at like a train-the-trainer concept. And so that $100,000 could be used to increase the capacity of whatever recipient organization that you're working with. It's not for the brick and mortar project. I don't know if I've answered the question, but hopefully maybe that's provided a little insight.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate it. If not, they can always just give me, like I said, you have my contact information here. You can send me an email and we can further discuss. I just want to thank everyone for taking time out to listen in. I hope this will provide you some type of assistance or guidance or I hope it was able to help. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate whatsoever to contact us. And please, good luck on applying for the RCDI program. Take care, everyone. Have a good evening or afternoon or good morning. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Great job, everyone.
So we off now?
Good job, Shirley.
Yes.
Are we off? Is it just us?
It says on air still.
Oh.